Would you believe me if I told you a secret that keeps even the most senior bankers on Wall Street awake late at night? The secret is this: the US government, from the very beginning, has absolutely, completely, and with zero intention planned to repay that $38.4 trillion national debt. They will not pay back even a single penny. The arguments you see now about budget cuts, raising the debt ceiling, or taxing the rich are all political theater performed for ordinary people. Behind the scenes, inside the boardroom of this super corporation known as the United States of America, the real plan was laid out long ago. They do not intend to repay the debt through the original path because that is a mathematically impossible task. They plan to make the money directly disappear. Moreover, they do not plan to use the means you are familiar with, not default and not war. They will use two tools you would absolutely never expect: an ancient metal buried deep underground, viewed as a barbarous relic, and a virtual code once viewed as a criminal's tool, but now seen as a lifeline. This is the greatest financial magic trick in American history. While most people are still worrying about inflation for their next dinner, a massive wealth transfer on the scale of tens of trillions of dollars is quietly being completed. Today, I am your guide. Let us tear back this curtain and look at the real world of 2026. To see the truth, we need to shift our perspective. Right now, please imagine yourself as the chief financial officer of this American corporation. It is a Monday morning in January 2026. You walk into your office holding your coffee, the window overlooking a seemingly calm Wall Street. But when you open the Bloomberg terminal, a piercing line of red text makes you break out in a cold sweat instantly. Your company owes $38.43 trillion. And in the exact second you blinked, the debt figure jumped another $92,912. Your fingers are trembling because you see an even more desperate line of cash flow data. Just to pay the interest on these debts, you will burn through $970 billion this year. To give you a visceral sense of this magnitude, let us make a comparison. In 2026, America's proud defense budget, including all carrier strike groups, F-35 fighters, nuclear submarines, and vast overseas bases, totals approximately $917 billion. Do you understand? This is a historic turning point. The cost for the U.S. to service its past debt has officially exceeded the cost of defending the nation's future by a full $53 billion. This is the iconic moment of an empire heading towards its twilight. It is like a family where the money spent every month just to pay credit card interest has exceeded their money for food and rent. In the normal world, such a family has only one ending: bankruptcy. But the situation for the U.S. government is worse than that. They are trapped in a typical borrowing new to pay old dilemma. The Treasury must issue new bonds simply to pay the interest generated by old bonds. This is no longer a debate about budgets. This is a mathematical death spiral. In this spiral, the compound interest on debt spreads like cancer cells, devouring $8 billion of societal wealth every single day. In this death spiral, those big buyers who once mindlessly bought U.S. debt, China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, have seen through the game. They are quietly withdrawing, and the huge gap they leave can only be filled by whom? The Federal Reserve, which is effectively a money printer. In the face of math, there are only three endings. First, default. But this would lead to a global financial nuclear winter. Second, severe austerity. But this would lead to civil war-level social unrest. Third, redefining the value of money. As you have guessed, the government has obviously chosen the third path. When a sovereign nation cannot repay its debt in its own currency, it will never honestly go on television and announce, "Sorry, we are bankrupt." It will use a method known in economics as financial repression, which is essentially a covert, legal looting of wealth targeting savers. Its core mechanism is very simple: create inflation, and then forbid interest rates from rising. Let me calculate the details for you. Suppose the real inflation rate in 2026 is 6%. Look at the prices of beef, energy, and medical insurance in the supermarket, and you know this is a very conservative estimate. But the Federal Reserve forcibly suppresses Treasury rates to 4% through a complex method called yield curve control. As a saver or pension holder, your account nominally grows because you get 4% interest. But in reality, your purchasing power is evaporating at a rate of 2% per year. Where does this missing 2% go? It did not disappear into thin air. It was transferred. It was instantly transferred from your savings account to the government's debt ledger. For a government burdened with $38.4 trillion in debt, every 1% of negative real interest rate means obtaining $384 billion in debt relief out of thin air. This is larger than the total GDP of many medium-sized countries. It is as if the government quietly pulled a bill out of your wallet while you were sleeping to pay their own bills. This is not without precedent. We need to look back to 1946. After World War II, the U.S. debt-to-GDP ratio was as high as 106%, a situation strikingly similar to today. The government at that time used 30 years of such operations to melt the debt down to a manageable level. That generation of hard-working savers effectively paid the bill for World War II. The script now is exactly the same, only the methods are more covert. They will adjust the calculation weights of the Consumer Price Index using core inflation, stripped of food and energy, to whitewash the piece, telling the public that prices are stable. But as a rational observer, you must understand, inflation is not a side effect of the policy. Inflation is the policy itself. They need inflation to dilute the debt, and every depreciating dollar bill you hold in your hand is the fuel for this massive rescue operation. If you think inflation is just a conventional weapon, then what I am about to reveal is the true nuclear button in the US government's balance sheet. This is also a forbidden zone that most economists are unwilling to discuss, an accounting magic trick regarding gold. Deep within Fort Knox in Kentucky and in the underground vaults of the New York Fed, the U.S. government hoards 8,133 tons of gold. This reserve amount is staggering. It exceeds the combined total of Germany, Italy, and France. But the most absurd and critical detail lies here. On the Treasury's official books, the valuation standard for this gold still follows an ancient law from 1973, valued at only $42.22 per ounce. Please stop and let your brain process this massive cognitive gap. Current market gold prices hover around $2,650, which means there is a price difference of more than 60 times between the government's book value and the true market value. It is like having a winning jackpot lottery ticket in your pocket, but telling the tax office it is just a scrap of paper. Currently, this batch of gold is worth only $11 billion on the books, but in reality, it is worth over $750 billion. Why keep this huge accounting loophole? Because it is the final life buoy. when the dollar's credit is on the verge of collapse due to excessive money printing, or when debt interest becomes completely unpayable, the president only needs to sign an executive order announcing the execution of clauses in the Gold Reserve Act to revalue the gold reserves based on market prices. The specific accounting process works like this. The Treasury issues new gold certificates to the Federal Reserve, priced at the new price of $2,650 per ounce. Upon receiving the certificates, the Federal Reserve will credit the corresponding cash into the Treasury's general account. Instantly, boom, over $680 billion or even more in book profit will appear out of thin air on the Treasury's balance sheet. This money requires no taxes, no bond issuance. It is merely a change in accounting standards. In 1934, President Roosevelt passed a similar act to confiscate private gold and reprice it, devaluing the dollar while repairing government assets. This is known in history as Roosevelt's Great Gold Heist. And now, the government does not need to confiscate your physical assets. They just need to guide the public to buy gold through ETFs to push up the price. It is a perfect loop. The more panicked the public is, the more people buy gold. The higher the gold price goes, the more valuable the government's reserves become, and the more debt they can write off. You are the one carrying the sedan chair, while they are the ones sitting inside counting the money. If gold is the defensive shield of the old era, then Bitcoin is the offensive spear of the new era. Over the past few years, we have witnessed a drastic reversal in Washington's attitude. Do you remember? Just a few years ago, they called Bitcoin a money laundering tool, an environmental killer, and rat poison. But by March 2025, the wind had completely changed. That shocking executive order, establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, marked a complete rewrite of the rules of the game. The logic behind this goes far deeper than simple investment profit. This is about the greatest challenge the global monetary system has faced since Nixon severed the link between the dollar and gold in 1971. Currently, the Global South, or the so-called BRICS nations, are accelerating de-dollarization, attempting to build a payment system that does not rely on the dollar. The United States feels an unprecedented threat. If the dollar is no longer the sole settlement currency for oil and trade, then that $38 trillion in debt will instantly become waste paper. To counter this threat, the U.S. must control the next generation of assets. Currently, the U.S. government has already controlled about 325,000 bitcoins through judicial seizures, such as the Silk Road case and hacker cases. Under the old rules, the Marshals Service would auction them off for depreciating dollars. But in the new 2026 playbook, the government chooses not to sell a single coin, holding them long-term. Even more significant is the previously discussed budget-neutral acquisition strategy, using the hundreds of billions in book profits generated from revaluing gold to buy Bitcoin directly on the open market. Why? Because of game theory. Bitcoin's total supply is locked by code at 21 million coins. This is an absolutely scarce asset. When the US starts holding Bitcoin as a reserve asset, it is effectively signaling to the world, if fiat currency is destined to devalue, then we will control the only digital hard asset that cannot be inflated. Imagine this scene. The moment the US announces the inclusion of Bitcoin in its national reserves, what will other central banks, the ECB, the PBOC, the BOJ, do? They not only have to face the weaponization of the dollar, but also face the US monopoly on digital assets. They will be forced to follow suit, falling into a digital arms race. What will be the result of this? An exponential explosion in the price of Bitcoin. And who is the largest holder? The US government. By pushing up the prices of Bitcoin and gold, The US government can turn its balance sheet from insolvent to the world's strongest in an instant. This is not to earn the price difference. This is to ensure that the US still holds the pricing power of the next generation global financial system after the decline of dollar hegemony. However, within this grand narrative, there is a dark chapter targeting ordinary people. Every coin has two sides. One is the government achieving self-salvation through asset revaluation, and the other is the escalation of control over the populace. Although the Trump administration halted the development of the Fed's retail central bank digital currency in early 2025 for political reasons, this does not mean the shadow of programmable money has dissipated. You need to be alert to an operation known as push and pull tactics. The push is panic. If you follow the commercial real estate market, you will find a multi-trillion-dollar time bomb buried there. In 2026, massive amounts of commercial mortgages are maturing, while office vacancy rates remain stubbornly high. Who holds these toxic loans? It is those hundreds of regional, small, and medium-sized banks. When these loans default, bank balance sheets will collapse. You will see news reports of banks closing their doors, ATMs unable to dispense cash, and long lines of depositors making runs on banks. At that moment, panic will spread like a virus. You will instinctively want to flee the traditional banking system, and you will feel your deposits are no longer safe. The pull is the sense of security. Just when you are most panicked and helpless, the government will launch a compliant digital wallet or stablecoin system fully backed by them. It will claim to be backed by gold and Bitcoin reserves. It is safe, instant, and always online. But while you embrace this new system for safety, you may have surrendered the most important thing: privacy. Under this new system, every transaction is transparent. Although it may not be called a central bank digital currency, compliant stablecoins under high regulation possess the same ability to freeze accounts and track fund flows. If a negative interest rate policy is implemented in the future to stimulate consumption, they can directly tax your digital wallet balance or set an expiration date on your funds. This is the inevitable path of financial modernization, and also the end of personal financial privacy. So, that is the entire script. A grand magic show is happening right under our noses. The government is using inflation to dilute debt, using gold to repair balance sheets, using Bitcoin to seize the future, and using banking crises to complete system upgrades. As individuals, we are like ants facing a tsunami, unable to stop the machine from running. But we can choose not to be crushed. As an analyst who has observed this history for a long time, before this video ends, I have 3 strategic suggestions based on rational deduction. First, do not be the denominator. Since we know that currency devaluation is the only solution to resolve debt, holding large amounts of cash is a form of slow suicide. In this era, cash is not called wealth. It is called waste paper about to burn in the fire of inflation. Keep only the liquidity needed for life. The rest must be converted into assets. Second, establish your personal central bank. Look at what the nation is doing. Don't listen to what they are saying. Since the US government is hoarding gold, and since they are building a strategic Bitcoin reserve, why aren't you? Allocate a portion to hard assets, independent of the traditional banking system. This is not speculation. This is purchasing insurance for the fruits of your labor. When the system resets, these are your tickets to the new world. Third, stay extremely sharp. 2026 is a year of turning points. Do not be distracted by entertainment news. You must keep your eyes on that $970 billion interest figure. and watch the default rates of commercial real estate. When mainstream media starts frequently discussing systemic upgrades or a new Bretton Woods system, the doors are closing. The wheels of history never stop, and wealth never truly disappears. It is merely transferring. In every crisis, 90% of people lose everything because they realize it too late, while 10% cross social strata because they positioned themselves early. In this future that is destined to happen, do you want to stand on the side being harvested, or on the side that prepared in advance? The choice is still in your hands. If any data point in this video sent a chill down your spine, or if you saw the essence of this game clearly for the first time, please do two things. First, smash that subscribe button and like. This is not just to support me, but to let the algorithm push this truth to more people who are still asleep. This is an information war, and we need more awake allies. Second, tell me your plan in the comments section. Are you choosing to embrace gold and Bitcoin? Or do you have other hedging strategies? Let's build a think tank of our own in the comments. In this world full of noise, being awake is a superpower. I am an observer dedicated to digging up the truth, and I will see you in the next video.